I think he feels like we did him justice in the story, and I hope his kids are proud of this as they grow up when they get to see the movie. And Ady has an amazing memoir as well, called Eyes to the Wind. You see him write that memoir in the film. And I'd really encourage folks in the audience who want to learn more about him and his story to pick up a copy. His story really begins long before the movie does. He was a pretty prolific and impressive activist and organizer for about a decade before he got ALS. All of that is condensed to a couple of minutes in the movie because what he does after is so amazing. But when you learn more about him, you understand the story and how he was set up to achieve all the things he did after.
The knowledge that I was dying was terrible. But dealing with my insurance company was even worse. I wanted to spend every moment I had left with Rachel and Carl. But then Congress came after our health care. I couldn't stay quiet any longer.
What scene got to you? Say really, got to you while you were filming it? And what one broke either him up or you up?
Woke him up?
No, and cracked you up.
Oh, cracked me up. Yeah. There's, I think one of everybody's favorite scenes, including mine, is when Ady's on the road taking a shower with his best friend. And it's both of those things. It's very kind of heartrending, but also really funny as they kind of have locker room talk about, how his wife wants him to get a six-pack and what they're going to do with his body. And so, and sell it to a sorority house. And I think that scene speaks a lot about the kind of loss of, his vibrancy and his feelings about, sexuality and all the challenges that come with this disease, but also, how he has learned how to relate to people and be whole and himself throughout this journey. And I, wonder in that and in this whole process, whether I would be able to take the situation with the same kind of grace and turn it into something so positive as Ady's been able to do, despite the immense challenges of it. And so the whole thing has been a very, and I hope the film gives a little bit of the experience that I had spending so much time with him, and makes you ask that same question of what would you do if you were dealt these cards. And they're very, very, very difficult cards to have been dealt. So that might be my favorite scene, but there were so many more and so many experiences that are really unforgettable. We certainly couldn't have expected when we started this journey that we'd be in the room with Kamala Harris and Bernie Sanders and all of these other VIPs and on the steps of the Capitol, leading these huge protests. So seeing it unfold in real time was really extraordinary. And I hope the film takes people on that journey.
What was the most difficult scene you had to shoot?
It's a good question. Certainly it was very difficult, and there's a lot of times in the movie where Ady becomes very emotional, and those were hard to film and be behind the camera. And I think this goes with many documentaries, where you're, as an interviewer, playing somewhat of a combined role of interrogator and therapist and counselor and friend, and but you're in this unusual position of also needing to let them express emotion and not necessarily comfort them. And so, that was very hard to be there and sit with that and be behind the camera and not try to be a friend, because you're there as a journalist in some ways, or trying to be objective. And so that was very painful. And I think ended up sometimes turning the camera off so that I could, be there with him and not just be there capturing his image. But he, really didn't make anybody feel bad for him ever. He was always the one to kind of break the ice and open people's eyes around, how to relate to his disease and how to be with him in that and hold space for him. So and then the whole journey itself was really, of the road trip, which you see in the film across the country, was actually a really, really fun experience. And it was a really kind of joyous and celebratory road trip with a group of young people really having the time of their lives and fighting for what they believed in. And so the whole thing wasn't always kind of wrenching and sad. A lot of it was actually a lot of fun, but super hard work because we were filming for like 40 days straight.
I get the feeling that for a filmmaker, the toughest part of the job is finally saying it's done. When did you know you had it?
Yeah, that was tough with this story because, as I said, Adi kept kind of breaking news all the time, and there's a lot of incredible headline making things he did, all the way from the fight against Susan Collins, where he raised a lot of money in support of her opponent, to the work he's done since COVID, where he's been really influential in successfully lobbying the Biden administration to release the vaccine patents and make vaccines available internationally, which he kind of single-handedly led this effort on. But for me, the film was less about all of the great political victories that he wins and losses and setbacks, and more about how he relates to his own disease and how he relates to his own family and his own son. The movie begins with him just becoming a new father, and that coinciding with this terrible diagnosis. And on top of it all, the Trump administration coming in, which kind of wiped out, a decade of his work as and hope that he had for the kind of institutions that he fights for and believes in. And then as that chapter comes to a close, and he's able to make these changes to our government, he's also, I think, able to see hope for his family and see hope for himself and what kind of father he can be. And so that felt like a very complete cycle in which of a chapter in his life to tell, but I don't think it's the last one. And I, think that Adi's best work is ahead of him. He's very active right now in fighting for care infrastructure and support to be part of the infrastructure bill, which is coming, which is a hugely important issue to people with disabilities like Ady, that caregiving be provided for by the government. And he continues on the struggle that we see in the film when he testifies for Congress in support of Medicare for all, which he believes is possible to achieve. And as he says in the film, we're one of the few developed countries in the world that doesn't have a public option for healthcare, and he thinks that we have a kind of once in a generation opportunity to change that. And I'm right there with him. I'm not objective on this issue. I hope the film advances that cause, and I really encourage people to check out the Be a Hero Fund, which is Adi's organization.
Are you going to shoot any more about him or do anything more and do a follow-up?
Yeah, we're not. Ady and I have joked about the prequel and the sequel. We are doing some more filming with him, kind of extra to the film. Maybe it'll be on the DVD extras. But Ady is right now doing a video series, which my team is working with him on, where he's interviewing Senate members of Senate and Congress and the House about this bill. And so we've been capturing a lot of virtual interviews with him, where he speaks to celebrities. We did one with Nancy Pelosi, where he kind of interviews them, as you see at the end of the film, with his eyes, which is really incredible, and holds them to the fire about how we're going to win progressive victories on these issues.